This is macOS Ken.
We're apparently not waiting long enough for iPhones. Not all USB-C cords are created equal, and South Korea threatens Apple over very little money for Apple. It is Monday, the 9th of October, 2023. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from macOS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by American Tech Support. Set up and support for businesses and homes for over 20 years. Find out more at americantechsupport.com. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSken. It's problematic when there aren't enough iPhones, and it's problematic when there are. Sometimes I think Wall Street doesn't want to be happy. Apple Insider has analysts at JP Morgan looking at wait times for the iPhone 15 line. From week 3 to week 4, they are down for most models, according to the firm's product availability tracker. Last week, waits for iPhone 15 and iPhone 15 Plus stood at 17 days. They're down to 15 days this week. iPhone 15 Pro wait times remain steady. They were 29 days last week. They are 29 days this week. And waits for iPhone 15 Pro Max have dropped a decent amount. Last week, they were 46 days. This week, they are 35. I will say anecdotally, waits for Apple's latest and greatest are shrinking. I told you week before last that the 512GB titanium blue iPhone 15 Pro Max making its way to me was expected to arrive between the 24th of October and the 31st. Over the weekend, I got an email from Apple saying it should be here around the 17th of October. Then, because I am a metaphorical kid and it is metaphorically almost Christmas, I tracked the shipment. UPS says now that it should be to me around the 12th of October, which is so close to now I am about to burst. But back to JP Morgan, bringing the worry. Apple Insider has the firm concerned over all of it. They say the initial long waits for the iPhone 15 Pro line may have been driven by early order momentum and/or supply availability, which is now fading. The piece has the firm arguing it may also indicate that the mix of sales within iPhone 15 series is tracking weaker than prior launches, with a higher proportion of volumes being allocated to the low-end models. Here's a question. Is it too early for a drink? Before the iPhone 15 line launched, there were reports that Apple was going to sell more phones from the Pro end of the line than the other end. Would it not make sense then for Apple to increase production at that end, thus shrinking wait times for the Pro? We did also hear several reports that camera parts for the Pro Max in particular were proving difficult, increasing wait times. Apple is said to have leaned on suppliers to overcome those issues. I would also point out that a month later, people are still waiting over a month for the iPhone 15 Pro Max, nearly a month for the iPhone 15 Pro, and 2 weeks for the iPhone that everybody thought nobody would want. Then finally, let's do that thing we do and quote Apple CEO Tim Cook from nearly 11 years ago. I'd stress that even if a particular data point were factual, it would be impossible to interpret for our overall business. Yields can vary, supplier performance can vary. There's an inordinately long list of things that would make any single data point not a great proxy for what's going on. I'm not saying JP Morgan is wrong. I do not know. But good grief, there is more than one data point at which to look, and more than one way to look at that one. But whatever. JP Morgan has a buy rating on Apple shares. The firm's price target on the shares is $230. If you have an iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max, stopping your phone from overheating was a great reason to update to last week's iOS 17.0.3. If you have any iPhone, closing a security vulnerability reportedly under active exploit in the wild was another good reason. If you're still on the fence, though, Cult of Mac has a new bit of news that should make updating seem like a good idea. According to the Cult, iOS 17.0.3 increases the battery life for many older iPhones. It's not a big increase for most models, but it's some. Relying on tests run by iAppleBytes, the piece says battery life improvements run the gamut from as low as a 4% improvement on the iPhone 13 to as high as 30% on iPhone XR. Sadly, iPhone 12 battery performance took a slight hit. Still, security fixes. Probably worth the trade. Are you having problems with Wi-Fi on devices running iOS 17 or iPadOS 17? Philippe Esposito at 9to5Mac is, and he says he is not the only one. At least one developer, folks on Reddit, posters in Apple's community forums, and some users in the comments section of Esposito's article say they've been having trouble with Wi-Fi as well. Initially, Esposito assumed it was his Wi-Fi network. However, he found that when his up-to-date iPhone and iPad stopped performing online, he was still able to surf normally on his Mac. Explaining the issue, Esposito says, despite being connected to Wi-Fi, his iPhone simply stops loading content in apps like Threads, TikTok, or even Safari. Sometimes the issue disappears for a few minutes. In some situations, Esposito has to manually disconnect and reconnect the Wi-Fi on his iPhone to get it working again. Like every unofficial problem, suggested solutions seem mixed. There's the turn it off, turn it on again thing Esposito's done. One person indicated that putting the device into and out of airplane mode made it work. One commenter on 9to5Mac says turning off iCloud Private Relay provided a more permanent solution, except for the part where they're no longer using iCloud Private Relay. 9to5Mac reached out to Apple over the issue. So far, they have not heard back from the Cupertino company. News of another issue with the iPhone 15 Pro and USB-C cables. The wrong cable won't be fast enough for some of what you want to do, but your phone's not going to tell you till it's too late. PSA, says another post from 9to5Mac, shooting iPhone 15 Pro video to an SSD won't warn you if your cable is too slow. Being able to shoot directly to an external SSD is one of the cool features Apple outed for this year's Pro phones. While you can plug any USB-C cable into the phone, if the cable doesn't support USB 3 speeds, 9to5Mac says the iPhone won't warn you, it will simply drop frames. According to the report, if you use a slow cable on something like a Blackmagic camera, it will warn you that it's not keeping up and is having to drop frames. On iPhone, it's just a surprise. According to Daring Fireball's John Gruber, the problem is that USB-C cables are a confusing mess when it comes to data transfer and high-speed charging capabilities. Well, that's a problem. The other, as Gruber points out, the iPhone keeps that information to itself until it's too late. More news in a moment, but first a word about today's sponsor, American Tech Support, online at americantechsupport.com. Are you the IT person for your business? Would you rather not be? Whether you're setting up from scratch or finally trying to make those Windows and Mac solutions work well together, if you're in the Denver area, American Tech Support can help. Yes, Denver, the one in Colorado. We usually talk about things you can order across the U.S. Well, the people at American Tech Support have done the across the U.S. thing, starting over 20 years ago in Southern California, then serving SoCal and the Denver area, then finally going all in on the Mile High City. The folks at American Tech Support listen to macOS Ken. Feels weird to say, but they are fans of the show. They were bummed that I wasn't getting a new iPhone this year, so they said if I would tell you about them, they'd get me a new iPhone, and they could stop being bummed. The level of experience they bring to American Tech Support is vast, starting as far back as backing up data for major corporations when data came on giant reels of magnetic tape. Setting up your office, your home office, or your personal media system may sound small by comparison, but think about it. Computers used to be one big thing. Today, even the most basic setups can have machines from multiple manufacturers running on various platforms. That's what American Tech Support does. Supports your tech. From fixing issues with your current setup to deploying solutions spec'd just for you. What do their customers say? Well, Chris says if you're looking for the right server at the best price, you need to speak to American Tech Support. Kimberly says from simple to complex, American Tech Support has gotten her law firm out of many jams with their Windows server. They're knowledgeable, they're friendly, and they're fairly priced. If you need tech support in the Denver area, get in touch with American Tech Support. 303-995-8324. 303-995-8324. Or visit their website, americantechsupport.com. Apple and Google may be on the hook for a lot of money in South Korea. I mean, not a lot of money for Apple and Google, but still. A piece from Apple Insider says both tech giants got news last week from the Korea Communications Commission, or KCC, saying they either needed to change their anti-competitive ways or pay up. A little over 2 years ago, the piece says, the South Korean government voted to require Apple and Google to allow alternative payment systems for their respective app stores. A piece from TechCrunch says Apple did make that possible, though it required developers that wanted to implement methods besides Apple's own in-app payment solution to submit a separate build of the app in question. Now, the Apple Insider piece has an examiner's report from the KCC saying that Apple and Google are still forcing app developers into specific payment systems. They're also said to be causing unfair delays in app review. For their part, Google sounds disinterested, while Apple sounds displeased. Responding to the KCC report, Apple Insider had Google saying, "What KCC has shared today is the pre-notice, and we will carefully review and submit our response. Once the final written decision is shared with us, we will carefully review to evaluate the next course of action." And from Cupertino Way, Apple said, "We disagree with the conclusions made by the KCC in their examiner's report and believe the changes we have implemented to the App Store comply with the Telecommunications Business Act. As we have always done, we will continue to engage with the KCC to share our views." Assuming both companies do the wait-and-see thing, the next stop could be a trip to the ATM. Apple Insider says Apple's fine could be the equivalent of roughly $15 million US, while Google's could be closer to $35 million US. The regulator did not say how it arrived at those numbers, according to Apple Insider. And finally today, how do you know it's a slow news day? I am telling you about a game in Apple Arcade. It's cool though. It's quick to play and will make you feel smart, or like you know something. CNET has word of Jeopardy World Tour Plus. If you play Jeopardy World Tour from the regular App Store, this is like that, but without the ads and without the in-app purchases. It's basically a simple trivia game with a bit of skinning from the game show. According to CNET, instead of clearing a board of 30 clues, you pick 5 of 9 clues you want to try to answer. You also don't have to buzz in when you want to respond. Instead, you have a time limit to answer a multiple-choice question. So far, the only thing that sounds like Jeopardy is the trivia part. However, CNET does point out some features specific to the game show, like the inclusion of daily doubles and Final Jeopardy, where you can risk it all on the unseen answer. I played one round, and I will say, it appears to be geared toward people in their 40s or older. I mean, based on the questions they were asking. It also seems to be meant to make people feel good. I'm not terrible at trivia, but the questions I got were embarrassingly simple. But hey, if you've got Apple Arcade, it's free. Well, it's included. You can play against the computer according to CNET or play against folks from around the world. Jeopardy World Tour Plus is available now in Apple Arcade. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by American Tech Support. Find out more and get in touch at americantechsupport.com. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSken. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. Info at macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.